Happy Halloween. Um, so, on this rainy Halloween day, I decided to read a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. That's why I have my Deerstalker cap on. Yeah. Um, and I read The Cardboard Box by Conan Doyle. And these Sherlock stories, as far as a reading experience goes, there's not much more uh, pleasure than uh, finding Sherlock Holmes for the first time. Um, I think the first time I started reading Sherlock Holmes was after getting one of these kind of thick books at the library, and then just staying up all night um, going through them and checking the next story and seeing how many pages it was, and like reading another one. They're fantastic. Um, so I read The Cardboard Box. I selected it at random, and immediately it was almost like watching a rerun of a sitcom that you love, and the the situations and the characters are just exactly how you remember them in a really good way. Um, so it's like a hot summer in London. Um, Holmes and Watson have nothing to do, so Sherlock Holmes is just like sprawled out on the couch. He doesn't like traveling or anything that bores him. It's like humorously beneath him, and Watson is just sitting there, and um, they're both kind of just idling. They're not doing anything, and Holmes pipes up and he goes like, I agree, Watson. That is preposterous." And Watson kind of starts because he was thinking. He had this train of thought um, that concluded in something being preposterous, and he can't believe that Holmes was able to seemingly read his mind. And Watson is saying, "How could you possibly have done that?" And of course, Sherlock goes like, "Well, of course it's much simpler," and he starts explaining how he could read Watson's facial expressions, and of course, like after he explains it, even though it's impossible, um, it ends with feeling as if it was much simpler or less magical than it was initially. Um, so the story, the case begins with a newspaper item about a woman who um, was mailed a parcel, and the contents of which was a cardboard box filled with salt, and in the salt were two severed ears, and it was enough. It was enough for Sherlock to be interested in it, and he contacts Lestrade. Lestrade is the inspector at Scotland Yard, recurring character, and so Holmes and Watson meet Lestrade at this woman's house, the woman who discovered the box with the severed ears, and it has of all the great little details and examples that you want out of a Holmes story, where they're looking at the box, and uh, uh, Holmes like picks up a piece of string, and he's like examining it, and Lestrade says like, "Is there anything important about the string?" And Holmes says, "This could be everything. This could," and the all the things that could go unnoticed, Holmes is picking up on. I won't spoil the case or how it's solved or anything, but the great thing about Sir Conan Arthur Doyle and the Holmes stories is that it doesn't matter. They're so entertaining on their own. They have fantastic characters. There's great descriptions. The funny interactions between Watson and Holmes. It's almost spoiler proof. You go into it knowing that he's going to solve it. It's just how is he going to crack the case, which brings the enjoyment to it. I'll say as for the collection of short stories, I think one of the most brilliant moves that Doyle made is having the narrator be Watson. Watson's the one telling the story, and in fact, the story that you're reading is supposed to be the chronicles that Watson had written. And the reason I think that is so vital to the enjoyment of the story and the interaction with these characters is, like, when I was first introduced to the Sherlock Holmes stories, and a handful of my friends, we've kind of discussed this before, you had this takeaway that maybe personally my observational skills might be as acute as Sherlock Holmes, or I could make these deductions in my life, and it's very similar to after watching like a Rocky movie and walking out of the theater or whatever, and just being kind of jazzed up that maybe if you were in a similar situation, you would come out on top. What makes it brilliant is that the reader is Watson. Everybody is a Watson. And so you get to see Holmes through Watson. It's idealized and sometimes romanticized. It's, I don't want to get into it, but it's borderline homoerotic. But I feel like it grounds the story so well that as a reader, you're supposed to relate. I feel like you're supposed to relate to Watson. Sherlock Holmes is a superhero. I don't think it would work otherwise. Anyway, I don't know if I want to say much more or have much more to say. So yeah, it's The Cardboard Box by Sherlock Holmes. They're all good. I've never read a bad Sherlock Holmes story. If you've never read them before, it's one of the highest recommendations that I could give. Love them, and they're rereadable. They don't fall apart upon rereading. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point. Happy Halloween again. Thank you for watching. Please leave some comments if you would like. Maybe you like my hat. And thank you and goodbye.